It's a growing problem on Facebook that's disgracing the dead. Tonight, a St. Joseph woman is fighting back against so-called internet trolls. Internet trolls are people lurking in cyberspace who launch attacks.
For years, the Kremlin and the media it controls have waged a multifaceted information and disinformation campaign.
Это Виталий Беспалов, журналист из Санкт-Петербурга, и я расскажу о своем опыте работы на фабрике троллей, куда я попал в сентябре 2014 года, пробыл там 3,5 месяца. Попал туда совершенно случайно, я перебрался в Петербург из города Тюмени, где я учился в университете, перебрался в Петербург, искал работу и просто совершенно случайно через вакансию на сайте Headhunter. Вакансия называлась контент-менеджер. Ничем не отличалась от других остальных вакансий аналогичных, кроме заработка. Заработок был на порядок выше, чем обычная эта должность. Тогда это было 45 тысяч рублей. Причем это деньги получали все рядовые сотрудники этого помещения. Те, кто там занимали более высокие должности, получали 65, 75, ну и дальше. По тому курсу это примерно $900, я думаю, около $1000. Для этой должности, для Санкт-Петербурга, это достаточно высокий оклад. Вот, я пришел на собеседование, но показалось мне очень странным, потому что, чтобы просто попасть в здание, нужно было заполнять анкеты, все свои данные, чтобы просто проникнуть внутрь, да, просто попасть. Паспортные, там, место регистрации, фактическое проживание, просто чтобы войти внутрь. Это было очень странным, собеседование было странное. Мне сразу сказали, что моя работа будет связана с темой Украины. Я буду работать в отделе Украина-2, заниматься новостями на тему Украины. И когда я спросил, то есть, какого формата будут новости, ну, это же было как раз в разгар, наверное, самый разгар конфликта на востоке Украины. Я говорю, нет, вы что, это будут объективные новости про Украину. И уже работав там, через 2 дня я понял, где я оказался, ну и стал просто перед выбором увольняться, потому что вообще эта деятельность, она противоречит моим политическим взглядам, моим пониманиям о том, чем нужно заниматься журналистом. И собственно говоря, и вот либо сразу уволиться, либо поработать, чтобы узнать об этом больше и вот рассказать, в том числе и вам. Вот. Ну и как-то вот провести какое-то такое спонтанное журналистское расследование. На тот момент, это я все говорю про то, что происходило в конце 2014 года, потому что сейчас все поменялось. Сейчас, насколько мне известно, тролли располагаются в разных зданиях. И с собой вот на улице Савушкина там осталось буквально несколько отделов, которые занимаются какой-то административной работой. То есть сами тролли располагаются по другим адресам. Некоторые из них известны, некоторые из них неизвестны. Так вот, в 2014 году, когда я работал, там это 4-этажное здание, оно было полностью набито людьми. Я думаю, это было больше 150 человек. Ну, 150-200. Но опять же, я по головам не читал, это мое такое приблизительное.
My colleague Robert von Warren, who happens to be the head of the center, when he is Dutch himself, and he went to his home country, and he grabbed some a newspaper and read an interesting story about the mapping Russian trolls in the Netherlands. So when he came back, he introduced me to this story and said that there are couple of interesting journalists in the Netherlands who are investigating this kind of Russian activities. And so we start talking, and we come up with the ideas that maybe it would be interesting to do or to repeat some similar research here in Lithuania. Well, actually, we submitted the proposal for Lithuanian Scientific Council regarding the scientific side of this project. Now we are working on the organization of training seminar for students and for specialists who would be interested in the subject. So our scientific idea was to do this kind of research and to see to what extent they want to impact various perceptions of our society, and what kind of stories they are interested in, what kind of subjects they are elaborating, and whether we can grasp the impact that being done by them.
I think what we are looking at is two basic outcomes, two main outcomes. One is to understand to what extent trolling takes place in Lithuania, also in light with upcoming elections, right, and political developments in the country. Because it's clear that Lithuania is one of their target countries. We don't have the size of the Russian community like in Latvia and Estonia, so you can't use that in order to create trouble in the country, so you need to use other means, right? On top of that, Lithuania has a pretty outspoken president who, let's put it that way, is not the most loved person in the Kremlin. At the same time, by understanding what ways this trolling is taking place, the extent of the trolling, the way this trolling is effective in the country, you can develop your countermeasures, right? So you need to have this research done in order to be able to say, well, so we need these and these measures in order to counteract.
I've been talking to the guys from the Netherlands. So what they did in previous research, so for instance in Netherlands, so they analyzed 3 million tweets. So their research was focused on Twitter, because Twitter is, I think, the only social network that allows, that opens up the archive and allows to make various analysis of the archive. I don't think that that Facebook or other programs allow to do that. So what they do, they use basically open sources, and they use like such analytical instruments like Facebook graphics and all the others that is available for public. We want and we hope to grasp the trolling habits and the trolling behaviors in Lithuanian public sphere, and so our main goal would be to demonstrate this kind of research results, and what would we do with the results afterwards. So I think that the main goal would be to advertise it and to show this to show this results for public as well as for specific institutions, including universities and maybe some governmental institutions. It will definitely be open source, so everybody who would be interested in the results could download it from our web and could use them as they want to.
What I'm very often thinking is about this whole trolling is whether we are watching something completely new, or it is something which has been around all the time but just has been packaged into a new package, as it were. If we talk about comparing hacking with trolling, I think there is a fundamental difference in the sense that hacking is very often focused on messing up a system, getting into a system and then either posting false information or just making sure that the system doesn't function anymore, which is quite evident. And sooner or later, and usually very soon, you see that a system has been hacked and it doesn't function. In the case of trolling, when trolling is done really professionally, it takes quite a while for people to find out that there is an issue of trolling, and a considerable portion of the audience doesn't even understand that they're being trolled, that the information is coming from a trolling source, and that it's not, how to say, real information, truthful information. So I think trolling is a much more sophisticated method. But at the same time, my feeling is that, you know, spreading false information has always been in history. It has been in the antique world. It has been in the times of the Greeks and of the Roman Empire. It has been in the time of the, you know, the Middle Ages and later. All the time there have been these waves of spreading false information. You know, look only about one of the essences of, or one of the sources of anti-Semitism, is this false story that Jews kidnap poor Christian kids and slaughter them in order to drink their blood. Completely false information, but sometimes has been very effective in creating pogroms and immobilizing people against the Jewish communities. So this has always been around.
The principle is quite similar, because whereas with conventional hacking the aim is to hack computer systems, with trolling and fake news the aim is essentially to hack the human mind. And particularly today, when it is quite easy to target specific audiences, when through data analysis it is not particularly difficult to identify what sort of grievances, expectations, hopes, etc. your target audiences have, then you can tailor a message that's bound to address what the audiences think, and most importantly how the audiences feel. Because with thought, you know, you can apply perhaps some critical thinking and consider whether it sounds legitimate or not, but when emotion is targeted, I think even the most critically minded can be affected, provided that the right trigger is pulled at the right time. And with trolling and fake comments and things like that, I think you get an even further inroad into human mind, because it doesn't seem like the message is coming from, you know, some either official source or a self-interested politician or whatever. You know, it seems to be coming from somebody just like you, sort of concerned individuals who are apparently sharing their experiences, their information, their thoughts. But of course all of those have been strategically placed to be discovered by the target audiences in question. So surely there is quite a grave danger in that.
I think that the provoking of those emotions is one of the main tasks of the trolls, because what is the general idea of any troll activity? They want to divide not only opinion but society at large. The general message is don't trust the system, whether it's the system in the Lithuania or in the United States. They want to usually they escalate different kind of stories, and they want to provoke different emotions among different social circles within the country. So that is why I think we need a more scientific approach to demonstrate their, in other words, to more rationalize their activity and to rationalize the impact that we make. Because now it's not very difficult to become hysteric in speaking about the trolls, but I think that is one of the emotions that they want to provoke for you or for me. They want to eliminate rational debate in every area that they are interested in, that they are working in. So I think that what the colleagues did in the United States, they stick to the same approach. They want to see what happened in reality, what kind of impact did really made Russian trolls in the United States in the process of election. Because now there are different stories, different rumors, From on the one hand, we have stories that Russians made the biggest impact in favor of Donald Trump. The others, on the contrary, say that now the impact was actually irrelevant, and they did mean nothing to the outcome of the result. So, it's standing from a side, not basing your argument on the somehow comprehensive research is difficult to validate your argument.
Я работал в отделе Украина-2. Работа моя не была работой троллей, конкретно моя. Ну, то есть это троллинг, конечно, но это не тот троллинг, который пишем в комментариях. Это были фейковые сайты, фейковые украинские сайты, несколько сайтов. У меня вот только я занимался в общей сложности 3 сайтами. Мелкие совершенно сайты, где на русском языке были новости. То есть мы находили новости, связанные с Украиной, особенно с конфликтом в Украине военном, и делали их таким образом. Заменяли там террористы на ополченцы, ну вот такое. То есть делали их такими, как об этом преподносят, допустим, на российском телевидении. В тот момент и, в принципе, я думаю, и сейчас. Ну, вот, собственно, я занимался этими вопросами какое-то время, потом так получилось, и мне интересно было узнать, что происходит в других отделах, что происходит. И так получилось, что потом я работал в отделе social media маркетинга. Это как раз вот этот отдел, который, особенно ВКонтакте, в Фейсбуке в меньшей степени, занимались спамом ссылок на эти фейковые украинские новости. Ну, то есть мы заходим на какую-нибудь группу ВКонтакте и видим там в комментариях спам, что в Украине там, на Украине обязательно, да, на Украине. Ну, потому что писали таким образом, как это принято в России говорить. Вот происходит такое безобразие. Но это отдел social media маркетинга. И были отделы троллями. Одних я не работал там, поэтому я так вот, то, что я краем уха слышал, о чем я могу говорить. То есть там работа была и в Фейсбуке, и на Ютубе, и в Live Journal, тогда он еще был более актуален, чем сейчас, особенно ВКонтакте. То есть, и в принципе работа была выстроена в основном на внутрироссийскую аудиторию. Как раз иностранное отдел, англоязычное отдел, да, он только формировался. То есть, когда я работал, это где-то ноябрь 2014 года, он только формировался, появились вакансии. Примерно такие, на которые откликнулся я, только со знанием языка и высшая зарплата. И, насколько я знаю, там был жесткий отбор. Такие случайные люди, как я, туда не могли попасть уже. Именно поэтому мы видим, что источников, очень мало источников. Особенно, насколько мне известно, нету источников с открытым лицом, которые рассказывают о работе в отделе англоязычном, потому что там все было гораздо жестче. Тогда очень, опять же говорю про 2014 год, про конец, очень большую активность велась на теме Украины. Тему Украины, вот это все эти определения, там бандеровская хунта и все это вот примерно то, что рождалось в стенах этого здания в том числе, то, что рождалось в комментариях, о том, что популяризировалось. Естественно, напрямую никаких там речей о том, что там мы проектом кремлевский, мы проектом еще какой-то не было. То есть все догадывались, но напрямую мы работали в компании тренд-исследования. Тогда я, конечно же, не понимал масштабы того, что будет производить это здание, и то, насколько это будет интересно. Я не думал, что это будет такой всемирный интерес к этой теме, потому что про выборы в США, тогда еще было 2 года до выборов в США. И вообще эта тема никак не звучала, там фамилия Трампа нигде не фигурировала.
Propaganda is divided into long-term, mid-term and short-term propaganda, but by the purposes. And I would say that contemporary propaganda ministries and agencies are mostly oriented on the short-term effect. Short-term effect presuppose that you could use more and more fake news. The second is trolls. It means comments, some hot comments on networks, and social networks. And the third, to imitate some events. Imitation of events. It's not just fake news, but even imitation of events, and to involve this imitation of events into more or less influential public discussion, that to show that event happened, nobody will negate that this artificial event happened, because it was inscenization, some staging. And then they immediately start to discuss this provocation, as some sort of reality, because it's quite difficult to show that it is fake news. This is very important, because that who works on the level of fake news? Only very yellow web pages, or trolls companies. I mean that if it is more or less serious television, TV company, or a radio company, or if it is more or less a trust newspaper, these newspaper, even in Russia, they need not the fake news, but organized events, or staging events. And for this reason, they use different tactics than trolls. So you see, this trolls, it means comments on fake news. And serious newspaper, they need not a troll and fake news, but they need more or less trusted information. And for this reason, they need to organize the events. It means that propaganda organize the event. They pay money, they invest into chaos, they invest into action, and then after it, they take some interview on the field, and then try to comment on more or less trusted newspapers, so to translate into the world, to the whole world, that it's this situation happened, and only this one sort of information, so-called Sputnik, or the propaganda channels, they translate to the Western countries. So you see, they have multiplicity of approaches, and every approach is used for different purposes.
There is sort of a branch of trolling activity, if you wish, that could be seen as primarily focused on spreading chaos among particular audiences. That could be some moral panic, or actual panic, reporting about fake events, catastrophes, etc. Within a target audience, or sort of distract public attention, as you said, from something that's happening in the background. But that sometimes is used by domestic politicians as well, sort of artificially creating some sort of little scandal there in order to distract attention from actual policies that are being passed there. So it's a tried and tested technique, and certainly this sort of smokescreen function of trolling is definitely there. But at the same time, much of the trolling activity should be seen as part of a long-term plan to sway and move public opinion in predetermined ways. And as I said, particularly doing that on the level of emotion, where it's more difficult to resist, and with sentiment analysis, with data analysis more broadly, those necessary emotions are pretty easy to gather, analyze, and therefore communication trolling models can be run and simulated.
We know that Russians are meddling with the domestic politics in various countries. As I said, Netherlands, we know what happened in the United States, and there were some research being done in Germany. But and this debate is very constant in Lithuania, but we do not actually have this kind of data, how deep they are involved, how deep they are trolling our public opinion. We know we have certain commentators, certain articles from the specialists who are into the problem, but we didn't have, we still don't have any account, more solid account on this issue.
We witnessed a little bit of that during last elections in both Germany and France. In Germany, there was a hack into the Christian Democratic Party's email accounts, and some documents were leaked, and it was thought that those would be used against Angela Merkel and her party. I mean, it didn't turn out to be terribly damaging. Perhaps not too much sort of compromising information was found. There was a similar hack during the French presidential election campaign in targeting Emmanuel Macron's team, but there, because the French press was forbidden to publish anything election related immediately prior to the elections, again, the damage was contained. So there were attempts, but these were not particularly successful, particularly in comparison with, let's say, the Democratic National Convention hack in the United States, which was quite damaging to Hillary Clinton's campaign there. So definitely there are attempts to influence political processes, and any election in the European Union, I think, is something where Russia potentially sees some ground for affecting politics in a way that's useful to them.
If we look at the American elections, we think that it's the first time that, a foreign power tried to influence elections in the United States to this extent. It's the first time that they used it, these type of measures. It's the first time that they used it to this scale. But, influencing foreign elections is something which has been standard. It's part of, it's part of life. Look at the Ukrainian elections after Maidan, for instance. Of course, Russia has been trying to influence it. It's not only by spreading false information, but you can also influence elections by creating crisis situations, right? For instance, by creating a war or creating internal opposition, which turns out to be funded from outside sources. And so I think this is something that we just need to live with, and we need to learn how to discern it and to make use of it. For me, very interesting is the recent elections in Ukraine, because this is it was an overwhelming victory for Zelensky. 73.3% is, it's really big. I think the main message of the outcome of the elections is that it's some people call it an electoral Maidan. It's a revolt against Poroshenko. People are completely fed up with Poroshenko and his policies, and anything is better than a continuation of the Poroshenko period. Zelensky actually won the elections on basis of a totally virtual program. Nobody knows actually what he wants. Yes, if you go to I went to the election booth on the 21st of April. Yeah, there is a program hanging on the wall. I mean, Poroshenko also has a program hanging on the wall. Difference is not that big. The only difference I see, or fundamental difference, is that Zelensky is talking about a normal country, and Poroshenko, with his fake patriotism, is talking about a great country. I think what played a major role in Zelensky's victory is the social media campaign around Poroshenko. So not what Moscow was doing, but what the Poroshenkoists were doing. Part of them are former Maidanovцы, but I know a large part of the Maidanovцы are actually very disappointed with Poroshenko, because there were promises after Maidan and most of them were never fulfilled. He promotes himself as anti-Russian when a large portion of the population has Russian as their mother tongue. They were insulted. So I think this whole attempt to create Poroshenko as the big patriot and kind of through social media wash over all the things that he did not do had a very contrary effect and actually pushed Zelensky much higher than he should have been. And I think actually for Moscow, Zelensky is much worse than Poroshenko, because Putin and FSB, leadership in Moscow, needs to have clarity as to what the policy is. With Poroshenko, everything is clear, so you can build a strategy. With Zelensky, nothing is clear. It's one big black hole. And so I think in Moscow they are as worried as some of the people in Ukraine are. In which direction is this going? And how are we going to respond to this? In the same way, I believe that for Moscow it would have been better if Hillary Clinton had become president than Trump. Because Clinton, everything is clear and you can develop your strategy. With Trump, the guy is crazy enough to say A today and B tomorrow and then turn around again. And so, every day there is something new and there's something unexpected. Well, not as massively, I think, as in the past, or at least not as successfully. Because, this is a much more sophisticated situation than in 2014, right after Maidan, when you have black and white. Now there is no black and white. It's a much more complicated kind of political setting. And, I think for Moscow, the outcome that in Ukraine, 5 years after Maidan, you have democratic elections, which are run smoothly, which were truly democratic, and a Jew becomes the next president of Ukraine, if you for years have been telling that this is a fascist country run by a junta, and suddenly this fascist country will be run by a Jew, it's kind of complicated. You need a little bit more than a troll factory in order to deal with this. Trump is for them not so much a guy they can do business with or rely on. He is destructive for the United States. So the United States has turned into a country which is basically only busy with itself, trying to deal with an idiot as president. With a Congress which is fundamentally divided, with a Republican Party that doesn't want to take distance from Trump because they are afraid that they will lose votes, not understanding that in the long run they will lose much more if they keep this guy in place. And this is already good for Russia, right? Because with America being busy with itself, it kind of disappears a bit from the international scene. With the trolling that they are now doing, is not even trying to oppose the truth with their own one fake truth. Their whole campaign is bringing about so many varieties of the story that people stop believing things altogether. It's destroying truth as a factor, right? So, if we look at MH17, they have been spreading multiple varieties, and that's fine. Nobody believes these varieties anymore because there are so many proofs that what they have been telling is absolute nonsense. But people also stop believing the International Judiciary Committee, which is investigating the disaster, because the general feeling is, well, where there is smoke, there is fire. The truth is always somewhere in the middle. So the Russians are lying, but probably the Dutch are lying as well, right? And that is enough. That's enough because people stop believing, the fact that there might be truthful information. And that's a success for the trolling. And I think this is something that we need to, figure out how to tackle this, how to deal with this. And that's a matter of time. 4 or 5 years ago, trolling was something very new. Now it's standard. I think something like trolling is or has been the most effective during the first period when it was being implemented because people didn't recognize it as trolling. First of all, and secondly, there were no methods in order to limit the effect of trolling, in order to ban sources of trolling from social media. And I think slowly but surely, all the countries that are being targeted start to realize that it is taking place, how it is taking place, and are developing mechanisms how to counter this.
All of those ongoing situations that captivate public attention can be sort of used for trolling. Now we have in the context of the presidential election campaign, sort of a developing theme about perhaps some nasty influences of Scandinavian banks escalated by the current governing coalition. So many things can be adjusted for trolling activity, but in either way, they are typically geared towards, well, perhaps even not necessarily convincing the public to take a particular stance, but to sort of erode trust within society, but even more importantly, trust between the government and government institutions more broadly and the society. I mean, to some extent, who needs trolling and information warfare when we have the current government? But on a more serious note, I mean, this issue of creating an atmosphere where the government and the state, therefore, more broadly seen as somehow nasty, scheming, oppressing sort of common person and sort of selling everybody out to either big banks or some human rights organizations or whatever, and therefore sort of the necessity to turn back to something more predictable, traditional values and so on, which is of course a big theme of Russia's self-representation. Well, all of those different strands of public discourse can be then connected to sort of a more Russian-friendly maybe attitude. Not necessarily directly, because positive attitudes towards Russia don't really sell that well in the public sphere, but sort of subterraneously bringing public discourse closer to that propagated by Russia. But I mean, the topics themselves, they're absolutely conditional on what's happening in the society. Anything can be adjusted and twisted to that.
Мне кажется, вот как раз после того, как вот вмешательство в выборы в США оно было практически доказано, я думаю, мало у кого возникает сомнение, что влияние это было, что были там тролли, были атаки в Фейсбуке. Возможно, его масштабы несколько преувеличены, возможно, что фабрика тролли стала лишь одним из звеном цепи вмешательства в выборы. Там были еще хакеры, которые гораздо больше нанесли вклады, остальные. Но то, что это было, я думаю, не возникает никакого сомнения. И если мы посмотрим выборы последние парламентские в США, то здесь след троллей уже не был виден. Я не думаю, что он был, хотя вот когда меня спрашивали до выборов об этом, я был уверен, что снова будет какой-то вот такой подобной атаки. Нет, по крайней мере, мы их не заметили, журналисты их не увидели. И какое будущее? Мне кажется, что, учитывая политическую ситуацию в России, экономическую ситуацию, и, то, в чем мы находимся, то, в какой реальности мы сейчас живем, то вполне возможно в ближайшем будущем новая волна оппозиционных настроений, которые появились после повышения пенсионного возраста в России, дальше. И вполне возможно, что скоро фабрика троллей вновь сконцентрирует свое внимание на России, на российской теме, на российских проблемах, на российскую аудиторию, для того, чтобы пресекать какие-то протесты и настроения. То, как сейчас во многих странах опасаются вмешательства троллей в их дела, мне кажется, можно уже немножко успокоиться. Наверное, обратить внимание больше на хакеров. На мой взгляд, это гораздо более перспективное направление, гораздо более опасное.